At the end of times, the army of the dead angel will go to battle for the last time. They will soar high on roaring wings and strike us like a storm. Leading them will be the last archangel. For the unborn, he will be a hovering death. For us, a mortal bearing the visage of his fallen father. For the imperium of man, he will be a beacon of hope, a warrior of endless bravery, a soldier of countless sorrows. Beware the golden mask, weeping frozen golden tears which watches eternally and never smiles. Luis, who would later be known throughout the galaxy as Dante, was born into one of the human clans in the deserts of the second moon of Baal. From childhood, Luis listened attentively to his father's tales of the Emperor's angels, who rise above men and stand guard over the galaxy against all the horrors that dwell within it. And he firmly decided he would try to become one of them. Growing up and becoming as strong as the poisoned environment of the moon allowed, Luis, against his father's wishes, fled for the slim chance to become a space marine and headed to the selection location. As necessity and the tradition of such things dictated, Luis departed in the middle of the night. Luis spent his last evening with the caravan in conversation with his father. He kept him up late purposefully, then waited for Areas to fall asleep. Luis crept out from under his bedclothes silently and pulled on his day clothes. Each movement of the roamer or jingle of a buckle made him stop, teeth clenched, but his father remained deeply asleep. His snores rumbled through the roamer. The tribe had been working all day at a rich deposit and they were all exhausted. Nerves lent Luis energy. He hoisted his salt pack onto his back. Made of carefully hoarded leather to carry the big slabs of salt from the beds to the hauler, it made a fine haversack. Inside were his meagre belongings, as much water as he could carry, his rad suit, knives, rad ticker, tinder stick, sleeping roll, water still, and dried scorpion meat, saved from weeks of meals. The water was the most important. Moving carefully so as not to set the roamer rocking, he crept to the neatly arranged cupboards. Space in the roamer was limited. Everything had its place. He opened his father's strongbox, tensed and ready for the man to come awake in outrage, but he didn't even stir. From inside, Luis took one of 3 strings of lead coins. The guilt of this action bittered him deeply. He tried to drive it off by telling himself his father wouldn't need so much money with him gone. Nothing could be less true. Luis paused by the door, taking one last look around the roamer's interior. It was cramped, barely enough room for 2 people. His bed curled around the rear wall of the driver's cabin, his father's at the back of the vehicle. Their sleeping places defined the whole of their lives. There was not enough space between for an adult to stand with their arms spread. He looked at the man under the blanket for too long. Now he was on the edge of departure. He could not tear himself away. "Goodbye, Da," he whispered to himself. "Dante, by Guy Haley." During his wanderings, Luis had repeatedly found himself between life and death. And on one such occasion, he had a vision of a golden angel who, with his whole being, urged the boy not to give up and to survive. Continuing his journey, Luis joined up with 2 boys who also aspired to be aspirants, Danail and Florian. Luis learned from his new companions that upon reaching the angel's fall, where, according to the legend of Sanguinius, he first trusted his wings and took to the air, he would need to acquire wings in order to reach the city of the angel's fall. But Luis decided to deal with that problem later, and together they set off. During one of the stops, Daniel suffered a bout of mountain sickness and was unfortunate enough to drink a liquid that appeared to be water, but was actually a predator hunting living creatures and desiccating them. Thanks to the death of his temporary companion, Dante acquired the wings necessary for the jump. Having reached the angel's fall, Luis took flight for the first time. "Go on, Luis," said Florian. "Jump!" A scream of defiance built in Luis's throat. He couldn't keep it in, and it burst from him. Once it was out, he had no choice but to go. It was easier than he had expected. He fell like a stone. He was still yelling, but the wind snatched the sound away from him. It tugged mercilessly at his spread wings, threatened to rip his father's goggles from his face. The edge of the canyon rushed at him, the crowd going from a single mass to individuals. "Why aren't I flying? Why aren't I flying?" he thought in a panic. Though his mind became blank, his body was not ready to die. His feet kicked back. The spine pole connecting wings to tail flexed. Leather thongs running from the tail spars strained, pulling at the ends of the wings and bending them. The wings filled out. He angled his arms upwards, though to do so was like trying to lift the world. Suddenly, he was ripped up out of his dive. Wobbling madly, he drove straight at the crowd on the edge of the cliff. Their cheers turned to panic, and they ran back from the edge. In the nick of time, Luis tilted his arms and went rushing away towards the center of the canyon. There the main stream of the river of wind grabbed him hard, threatening to turn his graceful bank into a deadly tumble. He managed to correct himself and he was away, chasing after other winged boys at 100 miles an hour. The roar of the wind dropped as he matched its speed. "Emperor, if you truly do watch over us all, aid me now," said Luis. The wind was dying, spreading out as the canyon relaxed its grip. Luis needed to gain height before he lost forward momentum. All of the boys who had passed the Eagle's gauntlet had lost height and were attempting to do the same. He looked enviously up at the black specks of those who had managed the feat. He ignored the boys who crashed into the sand and shouted for help. If he could keep going until first night abated and the rush of the night wind came, he might gain altitude. Luis forced the wings into a sharp curve with his aching legs. He aimed arms numbed by lack of movement skywards. The wings lifted him up, but his speed died. He was going to stall. He pitched forwards and he gained speed again, but lost height. 4 times he tried this, moving in a series of sharp swoops closer to the ground. By now he'd come some miles from the Eagle's attack. One last attempt saw him fly 50 yards up. There, his wings failed to catch the wind when he dipped down. He went hurtling at the ground. At the last moment, he pulled up into a deliberate stall, breaking enough that he hit the ground with merely bruising force. His wing spars shattered around him, tangling him in leather and straps as he rolled over and over violently along the dune-choked riverbed. Groaning, he pulled himself into a sitting position and shed the wings with the help of his knife. Boys sped through the sky, their whoops distorted by their speed. Wretchedly, Luis pulled out his bottle and drank greedily of his water. Once his thirst was slaked, his failure hit him. He had no idea where he was. Switching his pack to his back, he stood, oriented himself with the line of youths winging their way eastwards, and began to follow. First night ended. The night wind blew, 10 minutes too late to help him. True night fell. Luis continued his trek by the light of Baal and Balind. The river of water died pathetically, sinking into the sand and leaving a series of brackish pools behind, until these too disappeared, and the ancient riverbed continued dry as old bones. The wind river lost its force, its constant blow turning fitful, then dispersing, until it had blended itself with the slackening night wind of Baal. The valley sides receded further. The western mountains were a line as brown as old blood. The eastern range dwindled to nothing, surrendering to the dunes. On Luis plodded. It was too dark to see the flyers passing, and he kept his head down, doggedly placing one aching leg in front of another. He missed his staff. Day dawned. Luis continued. A flash caught his attention far away. He strained his eyes and lifted his goggles. Away on the horizon, a forbidding cliff raised itself out of the desert, soaring to 1,000 feet high from nothing. The rock face was in isolation from other such features, the hill it fronted sloping back and down almost as sheerly as the cliff. Before this anomalous mount was the titanic statue of an armored angel facing the sky. His wings and arms were spread, a sword in one hand, a chalice in another. In permanent exaltation, Sanguinius greeted the morning sun. A dim smear of brown blocks crowded his feet. Luis staggered forwards a couple of steps, then sank to his knees, laughing. He was looking at the City of Angels Fall, Dante, by Guy Haley. In the city, a group of candidates gathered, to whom 2 space marines came out and gave them a final chance to turn back and return home. And after they managed to weed out the weak-willed boys, they began to test the physical fitness of the remaining ones and sort them into groups. Luis's turn came. He was grabbed and taken up the steps. Arizon stood over him, taller than the statue itself, so it seemed. He had a strange odor about him, a mix of machine oils, perfume, and a sweet, coppery scent Luis could not place. Arezon's device was laden with needles that pierced Luis's skin when pressed against it. The boy gritted his teeth against the pain. Arezon smiled. "You bear the testing well?" The device made a musical note. A green light shone from its insides. Luis could not keep his eyes from the wonders of the angels. Technology on Baal Secundus was rugged, most of it battered, all the parts and materials for it scavenged from rad-wasted cities and endlessly recycled. He had never seen such elegant machines. Arezon tugged aside Luis's shirt, exposing the sores on his chest. "Some contamination, nothing too extreme," Arezon said to a thrall working by him. The man scribbled notes onto a long roll of parchment, spilling over a portable writing desk strapped to his chest. "Tell me, what is your name?" "Luis, my lord," said Luis. Appalled at how meek he sounded, he stood taller and said again with greater force, "Luis, my lord. You appear frightened, Luis." "I am frightened, my lord. And honest. An admirable quality," said Arezon. His voice was kindly, if harshened by his armoured suit's emitter, but his aspect was warlike. His armour hummed. A blow from the sword at his side would turn Luis into scraps of flesh. "Why, if you are frightened, did you not turn away and go back to your people?" "Because fear is nothing," said Luis as defiantly as he dared. "I have been frightened many times. Fear is to be ignored and overcome. Tell me, why have you come?" asked Arezon. "Do you wish to fight to win glory? Do you wish to live forever?" "No, my lord. No man lives forever, not even an angel. I wish to serve. I want to serve the Emperor, and through him I will serve mankind." Arezon gave Luis a long, appraising look. Luis, that is a boy's name. You are of the clans that do not use their angel names in the day-to-day speech." "No, my lord, I mean yes, my lord." Arezon made a noise that might have been a laugh. "I understand. You will have to reveal it if you are to be chosen." Luis kept his eyes on Arezon, but watched Malaphael from the corner of his eye. "Go on then, boy, tell him," growled Malaphael. "Tell him your angel name." Luis hesitated. Nobody but family knew a person's angel name in his clan. They were precious words, kept safe from the searing sun and corrosive salt, pure things in an impure world. Luis had voiced it a handful of times in his entire life. My name is Dante," he said, the word strange on his own lips. "Your opinion of Dante, brother?" asked Arezon of Malaphael. The Black Angel nodded. "Dante, by Guy Haley." After passing the initial selection, Luis was becoming stronger and more resilient. He was taught to wield the staff, followed by the wooden sword and shield. They gave him a powerful spring rifle, similar to those used by the Blood Tribes, but much better. The youths were endlessly tested in all conceivable forms of combat. Those unable to grasp these skills on the fly lost the opportunity to learn altogether. Judgments were passed without warning and without appeal. The trials proved to be serious. Luis and the others were tested in every conceivable way, deprived of sleep, forced to run in the heat and almost complete darkness of the night. Their endurance, intelligence, and strength were subjected to all possible trials. They would wake from brief moments of oblivion to find themselves in a maze, on the arena of a crater, or on a combat training ground. Various tasks, many of which proved to be deadly, had to be performed collectively. Endurance tests followed combat training, and battles that began as demonstrations often turned into fights to the death. As the trials progressed, the number of neophytes drastically reduced. In the final test, Luis had to face a duel with the man who had enabled him to reach this point. His opponent turned out to be Florian. After a short duel from which Luis emerged victorious, he refused to finish off his best friend on the order of his lord. "I will not slay him," he said quietly. "What did you say?" asked the chaplain. "I said I would not slay him," Luis shouted in sudden fury. "You would throw away your chance to become a servant of the Emperor, a space marine, one of the greatest warriors in the galaxy, for the sake of him?" scoffed the chaplain. "You are a fool and not worthy of the gifts we would bestow. Kill him!" "No." Luis cast his staff away. It clattered into the corner. He stood tall. "For him I would abandon anything. He helped me when I needed help. He befriended me when I had no friends. He guided me when he could have left me. I will not repay his kindness with treachery. If that means I am not worthy, I do not care. Kill me. I will not serve masters who demand the blood of my brother." Malaphael leaned closer. Luis took a step back from his grinning skull face. "What of glory and of power?" he whispered, his voice hissing through the vox grill. "Surely a fair price for such things is one life." "I did not come here for glory or for power. I came to serve," said Luis calmly. He felt cheated after everything he had undergone, all he had suffered, all he had hoped. He was angriest most of all at himself, for he had been a whisker away from spilling his friend's brains upon the floor for his own gain. He hid it all and faced his death with dignity. "I will have no part of evil." The chaplain's posture changed. He rested his weapon's head upon the floor and crossed his hands upon its pommel. "Then you have passed." "What?" said Luis. Florian looked up dazedly. "There are many tests in the final choosing, for each aspirant is different. This one was selected for you. Among ourselves we call this the test of Horus. Do you know why? Do you know who Horus was?" "He was a devil, a monster who fought the Emperor for control of the heavens," said Luis. "You are almost correct. Eons ago there was a great war where angel fought against angel. Our Lord Sanguinius was but one of 20 sons of the Emperor. These warriors were invested with the powers of ancient technology and prosecuted a great crusade, reuniting the worlds of humanity for the first time in thousands of years. But the favoured son of the Emperor, the Warmaster Horus, grew bitter and turned on his father, destroying the work of the Emperor ere it had been completed. Half of his brothers joined him in treachery. Our Lord did not, but stood to the end against Horus, whom he had once loved. This test is named for him because it is a test of loyalty and brotherhood. We wish to see how well your principles endure when you are ordered by a mightier being to commit atrocity and you held fast to your morals." Luis was aghast. But the trial of blood, that is the same. You told us to kill and we killed. Here you ask me to kill and hope I do not. Are you hypocrites as well as torturers?" "You ask questions now, defiant ones at that," said Malafel after a moment's pause. "You are unusual. I should cast you out for your impudence, Luis Dante." He stared down. "But something stays me, and I will answer your question. On occasion, as a brother of the Blood Angels, you will have to do things that might otherwise appall you. This test is a measure of your moral compass. Will it always point true to the ideals of our Lord, or can it be wavered? There are lines, boy, that should never be crossed. To kill rebellious soldiers who fight because they have no choice is a regrettable evil that should tear at you if you are ever required to do it. The slaughter of the innocent to stop the machinations of the guilty must sometimes be undertaken, but to revel in slaughter for slaughter's sake is forbidden, and to turn upon a brother for personal glory or gain is the first step on the path to damnation. Temptation, above all else, is the hardest test for a space marine to bear. Offered such great power, what man would not waver in his devotion to the true Lord of mankind? Do you see?" Luis looked down at Florian. Emotions of the most powerful sort warred in him. "You seem to be an intelligent boy. You will therefore have noticed we did not split the groups you had formed yourselves," explained the chaplain. "We asked you to fight against those who you had but fleeting loyalty to, not against those whom you held in genuine affection. You must forgive us for the artifice of these tests." A note of regret crept into Malafel's voice. "If this universe were fairer, then such cruelty would be unnecessary. But believe me when I say the universe you shall discover is not fair, and it is not kind. These petty horrors help humanity in the end." Dante, by Guy Haley. Having passed all the trials, Luis was honoured, and under the stern gaze of the statues of the Blood Angels' heroes, Dante received the sanguinary chalice and drank the synthesized blood of the 9th Primarch. He fell into a ritual year-long sleep necessary for the implantation of the gene seed and was placed in a blessed sarcophagus. The memories encoded in Sanguinius's genetic material flooded into Luis, filling him. Cygnus, Ultramar, Melchior, Kaivas, murder. Names of worlds he had never visited whirled through his mind. It was at that moment that the neophyte first attracted the attention of the sanguinary priests. All sleeping candidates experience visions of the life and death of their Primarch. However, Dante incessantly shouted the names of fallen Primarchs, dark gods, and long-banished demons throughout the year, balancing on the edge between sleep and wakefulness. Many candidates perish within the sarcophagi. Such is life. The weak fail even at the very beginning, but no one survived. after such suffering. All priests noticed the desperate traces on the inner lid of the sarcophagus from his attempts to escape. Nevertheless, reborn in the image of an angel, Dante exemplified mental stability and calmness. He was ready to begin the upcoming training. Some of the sanguinary priests were certain that the vision foretold the impending descent into the insanity of the red thirst and black rage. Others believed that although Dante had endured more suffering than any other, having emerged from the sarcophagus in perfect condition was an omen of greatness. After his ascension, the boy named Luis died, and in his place stood Space Marine brother Dante. From that moment, Dante began to master not only the martial art, but also the skill to control the two curses of his gene seed. Over time, Dante rose to the rank of captain. Later, he fought during the Callias insurrection in the 40th millennium, after which the forces of the Blood Angels were ambushed by Chaos Space Marines, where all the Blood Angel captains, except Dante himself, were killed, and the chapter conclave proclaimed him chapter master. Though undeserving, although Dante already had a commendable service record due to the lack of other candidates, Dante took command of the chapter. The appointment of a chapter master was a somber affair, following inevitably on from death as they did. But Dante's was remarkably grim. There was little ceremony at the investiture. The Blood Angels gathered in the Grand Basilica of Bloodcaller, still clad in their battered armour, far too few to fill it even a quarter full. They watched as their last remaining officers did what was required of them, waited on by whatever thralls could be found. There were no choirs, for the thrall choristers were dead, no cyber constructs to herald him, no music. The dust of near defeat still hung on the air. The silence of 200 transhumans who had come so close to death filled the basilica with unbearable tension. The rituals undertaken were similar to those Dante had undergone when he was first made a captain. He was presented without armour. Pledges to uphold the graces and virtues were painted with blood upon his skin. The carriers of Sanguinius's holy vitae were bled, and their fluids mingled in the sacred red grail. Then Dante was bled of 9 drops of blood from his neck in honour of the old legion's number. As Gallion, now acting sanguinary high priest, went to each man in turn with the cup, his armoured boots crushed fallen jewels to dust. As the assembled brethren watched on, the chapter officers drank the blood, and one by one they called their agreement with the decision. The number of the council was much reduced, and their saying of the accord was short. They spoke their assent sincerely and wholeheartedly, even Keshiel, though when he spoke the words, there was a plea in his voice that Dante not fail them. Or so the new chapter master thought. Dante drained the grail, and Ralderon, the name of the first chapter master, was incised into his flesh. As Commander Ralderon, he who was the first, did not fail our father, nor shall you, said Bephael. Nor shall I, said Dante. This I do swear. Then Dante was bade kneel by the high chaplain Bephael and asked to bow his head. Dante stared at angels depicted by a mosaic of semi-precious stones. They were so perfect they looked real, and appeared as if they were flying upwards from a bottomless sky and would burst into the basilica. Tesserae smashed out of the mosaics lay scattered like broken teeth, but so fine was the art that the illusion was barely troubled by the gaps. An archangel of surpassing beauty led the host in the floor, looking upwards, arm outreached towards its destination. Dante stared into its calm eyes as Bephael spoke over his head. Blood dried upon his body, chilling his skin. "This is a grave time for our chapter," Bephael said. "There are fewer than 200 of us in the fleet left alive, a little more than that in the galaxy entire. Our chapter has been brought to its knees. It will take us centuries to recover our strength." Dante stared at the archangel's face. In its heroic features he saw a resemblance to his brothers, and he remembered Chaplain Malaphael, his mentor, slain at the hands of a traitor dreadnought, and dozens of others he had known, fought with, grown with, bled with, all dead. His head throbbed with the effects of the thirst. The shared blood he had consumed made him crave more. He yearned for Sanguinius's might, so that he could smite his enemies. "Give me strength to resist instead," he thought. "Do not let me fall into darkness, not yet, not now." "Do not allow your hearts to grow heavy, my brothers," said Bephael. "We survive." The legacy of the Blood Angels will continue. The enemies of the Imperium desire to see us destroyed because we are a threat to them. We remain so, and shall it ever remain, unto the end of time. Rise now, Dante, commander of the Blood Angels, chapter master of Sanguinius' firstborn sons. Dante got to his feet. Do you take this burden? I do, said Dante, with all my heart. Then I proclaim you, Commander Dante, chapter master of the Blood Angels. Dante had meant what he said, but even as his brothers called out his name and burst into song, the great statue of Sanguinius on the sternward wall stared down, and Dante felt the Primarch's burden settle heavily upon him. Darkness in the Blood, by Guy Haley. One of the most renowned campaigns he participated in was the Second War for Armageddon, where his leadership allowed the besieged defenders to achieve victory over Gajkul Thraka. There he led a valiant strike against the Orcs assaulting Hive Acheron. In the final stages of the war, Dante's tactical genius finally broke the backbone of the Orc army, leading a massive attack against the Orcs besieging Hive Tartarus. His Blood Angels annihilated half of the Orc forces and drove them back into the ash wastes and jungles. In the closing days of the 41st millennium, the largest recorded tendril of Hive Fleet Leviathan descended upon Baal, the homeworld of the Blood Angels and its moons. The ensuing battle would become the bloodiest and most costly in the noble history of the sons of Sanguinius. At Dante's call, nearly all the sons of Sanguinius responded and began arriving at Baal to defend the homeworld of the chapter's forefather. On the sands of Baal Prime and Baal Secundus, on Baal itself, fortifications and bulwarks were erected. Flotillas of cruisers and battle barges gathered in the void around Baal and its moons. Their combined power was enough to crush star systems and obliterate worlds. With the Tyranids' approach, Commander Dante and his closest aides made decisions that would have been unthinkable in brighter days. Precious stocks of the Blood Angels' gene seed were extracted from their vaults, carefully packaged for transport under the vigilant watch of the sanguinary priests, and then sent on a swift starship with meticulously chosen guards. You send away your gene seed. Yes, said Dante. You do not think you can win? Said Seth bluntly. Dante looked at him, or rather Sanguinius did, his golden face frozen forever, in an outraged shout. I have seen Leviathan descend, said Seth. That was no victory. You said so yourself. We nearly lost our lives at Kryptos. We will lose everything here. Dante looked away, back to the landing pad. There is hope. The Sanguinor himself told me. I was like you, Seth. I despaired. Beyond wrath, there is only despair, said Seth. Better to be wrathful. I choose to be hopeful. The Sanguinor has never spoken. Not once in 10,000 years. At Kryptos he did. Sending your gene seed away is not the act of a hopeful man. I am a pragmatist, Gabriel. Albinus is a loyal warrior. He will keep our future safe, even if our home is lost. The scouts were newly implanted with the carapace, prematurely elevated in case of need. They must prove themselves still, but when the time comes they will be ready for their armor, said Dante. For what? We cannot win, said Seth, and 10 scouts cannot rebuild the Blood Angels. Perhaps not, conceded Dante, but this chapter has been reduced to a handful of warriors more than once. If we fail here, the Blood Angels will rise again on some other world. Devastation of Baal, by Guy Haley. Knowing that the fate of his chapter, and perhaps the entire Imperium, would hinge on the defense of Baal, Dante sent out a call to the Blood Angels' successor chapters, informing them of the doom approaching the homeworld of their beloved progenitor, Sanguinius. All came to aid the Blood Angels, from fierce flesh-tearers to noble blood drinkers, and even the wild, reclusive warriors of the Carmine Blades, or the Knights of Blood who had been declared excommunicate traitoris by the High Lords of Terror, arrived to bolster the defences. Every battle brother would be vital in the upcoming war, as the approaching Tyranid fleet was colossal. Undoubtedly the largest force of Xenos ever recorded by the Imperium. The first few swarms to land on the planet were obliterated by long-range artillery bombardments and volleys of bolter fire long before they reached the defensive lines. Yet with each passing moment, more Tyranid spores rained down from low orbit, their bloated flesh sacs bursting, unleashing warrior organisms into the fray. By the 10th wave, the ground was barely visible under the throng of chitin-armoured bodies. Among this carpet of flesh, colossal creatures, hive tyrants, stood out. These monsters directed the swarms around them, even as they unleashed volleys of burning bioplasma or breached massive gaps in the fortifications with their titanic limbs. Initially, the battle was favourable for the sons of Sanguinius, but suddenly the tyrannid hive mind sent a previously infiltrated lictor to eliminate the void shield generator. And though he stood amidst the greatest army of his era, Dante could not formulate a strategy against such a relentless slaughter. Had the void shield not fallen, the sons of Sanguinius might have held out, and the battle could have ended in triumph. This had already transpired on Macragge, but Behemoth was only a small pond compared to Leviathan. And the shield fell. With each passing day, the Blood Angel's strength weakened, forcing Dante to order retreats until there was nowhere left to retreat. It was in this dark hour that a new calamity descended upon the Baal system. In a cataclysmic eruption of empiric energy, a warp storm known as the Great Rift raged across the galaxy. The skies above Baal burned with ethereal fire, and in the roiling depths of the Immaterium, ancient malevolent entities turned their dreadful gaze upon the material world. Darkness came to Baal as a shock of purple fire. The three worlds were engulfed in a haze of boiling energy that first swallowed the stars, then obscured each of the trio from the other. On Baal Secundus, the astropaths of the Blood Angels, sheltered behind the ceramite wall of carmine blades, cried out and perished, leaving only a handful alive to experience the full horror of the warp unleashed. Deep in the Ruberica, Mephiston's coven of psychers reeled. Navigators aboard the embattled ships were blinded by soulfire. Librarians fighting in the arcs dropped convulsing to the ground, their teeth shattering under the force of their spasms. Every mind felt the touch of the warp, whether great or small. Being blessed with a portion of their father's psychic might, the scions of Sanguinius were all troubled. Guns dropped from numb hands as visions of wars lost long ago filled their minds, and the rage stirred in the breasts of everyone. The Tower of Amario resounded to frenzied calls for blood and flesh, but the sons of the Great Angel were less afflicted than their foe. Screaming warp fire crashed against the gestalt soul of the Tyrannids, catching it unawares. The delicate synaptic web that bound its numberless minds into one being shriveled like thread in a fire. Never before had the hive mind been so grievously wounded. Its control over its trillions of bodies was violently disrupted. Hive fleet was cleaved from hive fleet, brood from brood so catastrophically that for a moment the hive mind ceased to be. It recovered quickly, diminished but alive, but that moment seemed to the hive mind an eternity of darkness. Trillions of its creatures permanently lost touch with the hive mind and were reduced to unthinking animals. For the first time in its existence, the hive mind tasted death. In the Baal system, hundreds of thousands of Tyrannids died, their brainstems reduced to smoking mulch by psychic feedback. Aggressive void predators became drifting hulks in the space of an instant. In the Strategium, Dante collapsed unconscious. Thousands of space marines of the blood followed him. Many awoke with no memory of who they were, their scarred minds full of visions of Sanguinius's death. The end of their own lives in madness and blood beckoned. The Cicatrix Maledictum had opened. Devastation of Baal by Guy Haley. Dante decided on a suicidal attack to destroy the Tyrannid hive tyrant. And if the Blood Angels were destined to die, they intended to do so in battle and on their own terms. Ultimately, hacking his way and facing the hive tyrant, Dante, overcoming bouts of the Black Rage, managed to defeat him, but was himself on the brink of death. As he was dying, the spirit of Sanguinius appeared to Dante, ordering him to live on. Dante lost consciousness. The way he jerked awake, breath sharp in his lungs, suggested that his heart had stopped beating for a time. That was the most likely explanation for the lambency which replaced the dark. He was cocooned in the false warmth of death. The pain had gone from his chest. A glorious armoured warrior stood over him. His helm was fashioned in Sanguinius's image, the same face Dante himself had worn these long years. 5 months earlier, after Cryptus, Dante had looked into that mask and felt shame. He felt that shame no longer. The Sanguinor had come to him at the end of his service. "You came," he said. His throat was dry, his lips numb. The beautiful voice that had inspired millions was a harsh whisper. "You came after all." The Sanguinor kept its silence, but stood back and flung an arm wide to indicate a greater presence behind it. Dante's breath caught in his chest. Once again he saw the face of Sanguinius, but this was no metal representation. The face was of flesh. The wings that spread either side of his body were white feathers, not cold sculpture. His body was as real as his sorrow. He shone like a desert sun in the full glory of noon, a bringer of light, dangerous in its incandescent power. "My son," Sanguinius said, "my greatest son." The Primarch reached out to him. Dante was on his back, but at the same time it was as if he floated in an immense void, and Sanguinius hovered in front of him. And yet, when the Primarch cried, his tears fell forward onto Dante's face. All reality's order was disturbed, but this felt like no dream or vision. When Sanguinius's glowing fingers traced the line of Dante's cheek, they were solid and warm, and they brought into him a sense of peace and holy joy. "You have suffered greatly for mankind's sake," said Sanguinius. His voice was beautiful. "You have won your rest 1,000 times. Rarely has one man given so much, Luis of Baal Secundus. You have been a light in dark times. I would give you any reward. I would take you to my side. I would free you from strife. I would release you from pain." "Yes," said Dante, "please. I have served so long. Grant me the freedom of death." Sanguinius gave Dante a look of profound sorrow. I regret that I can do none of those things. I need you, Dante. Your suffering is not done." Sanguinius gripped Dante's face in both hands. Strength flowed from the Primarch, driving out death's comfort and replacing it with pain. The scene rippled. He heard the shouts of space marines, felt the ghostly touch of living hands upon his armor. Sanguinius faded. "Please, no," Dante cried out. "My lord, I have done enough. Please let me rest." The light was dying. Sanguinius's smile carried with it the sorrows of 10,000 years. Darkness was returning. The great angel disappeared into it, but his glorious voice lingered a moment. "I am sorry, my son, that you cannot rest. Not yet. Live, my son, live." Dante returned to life, screaming for the mercy of death. Hands were all over Dante, holding him down. Sharp pains intruded via his neural shunts. "No, no, no, no more! Take me with you, I beg you!" Dante shouted. "Devastation of Baal!" by Guy Haley. Suddenly resurrected, Dante found himself before the newly arrived reinforcements in the person of Guilliman. The Primarch and his newly arrived forces had fought in many battles liberating Baal. The fleet of Hive Fleet Leviathan was largely destroyed. Guilliman not only saved the planet, but also revived many chapters with the help of a new fleet of freshly forged Primaris Space Marines, thus minimizing all losses. Guilliman praised Dante for all his merits in saving the chapter and commended him for all his long service to the Imperium. Upon a throne of pure adamantium, surrounded by hundreds of pristine standards, sat a living miracle, a giant warrior clad in blue and gold, his expression fair yet stern, a massive gauntlet upon one hand, a huge scabbarded sword resting upon his knee. Now he understood the significance of the sword missing from his vision. The sword of the Emperor was there before him, upon the person of a living Primarch. Guilliman had come to Baal. There was no mistaking it. Dante had seen the Primarch before, shut away in a stasis field in the fortress of Hera on Macraga, where he had sat a second from death for most of the Imperium's history, but here he was, alive and breathing. The Primarch's physical presence hit Dante hard. Guilliman was nobility writ large, a monument in flesh. He was overwhelming. Ignoring the hurts of his healing wounds, Dante fell to his knees with a clatter and dropped his head. "Can it really be true? Is it really you? Do you live?" The Primarch stood and set his sword aside and came down the steps. "Get up, Dante," said Guilliman gently. "I will not accept displays of humility from a man like you. You are one of the few in this era who have earned the right to speak with me on equal terms. Rise, now." Dante grunted with pain as he attempted to get to his feet. Guilliman grasped Dante's pauldrons and bodily hauled the chapter master up. "Forgive the indignity," Guilliman said. "I see you are hurt." Dante nodded numbly. "Never kneel before me again." I will have you stand with me as a mark of respect. I will order you not to if I must. I would rather our relationship not function on those terms. I have no time for deference, there is too much to do. Though if your pains are great, you may of course sit, he said with the ghost of a smile. Is this a dream or a vision? Neither. I live. I have returned to save the Imperium, said Guilliman. Forgive me, my lord. Dante had to step back to look him in the eye. I failed. I called together all the chapters of the blood and lost them all to save Baal. The Arx Angelicum is in ruins, thousands of space marines are dead and Baal is devastated. Forgive, said Guilliman. There is nothing to forgive, Dante, you stopped them. When we arrived, the Hive fleet was greatly depleted and easily destroyed. As we speak, the Indomitus Crusade is scouring this system of the last remnants of the Tyranids. You have achieved what few others have and destroyed a major Hive fleet tendril. I would congratulate you, but there is nothing I can say that encompasses the scale of what you have achieved. Guilliman put a hand on Dante's shoulder. You have saved Baal from the hive mind, Commander Dante, and with it the greater part of this segmentum. At that, Dante wept freely. I'm sorry, he said. I almost lost everything. Please forgive me. There is nothing to forgive. Dante did not hear. Overwhelmed by his hurts and the luminous presence of a living Primarch, he collapsed to the ground. Devastation of Baal, by Guy Haley. After the salvation of Baal, Guilliman appointed Dante as Lord Regent of Imperium Nihilus. He used his new authority to organize an offensive to reclaim the Red Scar region from the tendrils of Leviathan, and in recent times Dante fulfilled his duty in the guise of a Primaris space marine, successfully undergoing the procedure of primarization.